Now I'm very excited to welcome back a huge fight enthusiast and amazing MMA handicapper in Lou Finocchiaro from gamlou.com and the Sneak Teep podcast. You can follow Lou on Twitter at gamlou. Lou, thanks for coming back on the show. What kind of trouble have you been getting into lately?
Gab, thanks for having me, first of all. Second of all, no trouble. I'm up to my eyebrows in trying to wade through the 555-page Warren Sharp NFL manifesto, if you will. And I'm happy to report that I only have two teams remaining, which is Washington and Tennessee, I believe, the last two alphabetical. So I'll get those done later today or tonight, and then I'll go through some reviewing processes, and then I should be ready to make some thoughts. At least at this time of the year, I'm ready to make some thoughts on NFL teams in a negative fashion, meaning teams to not achieve something, teams to not make the playoffs, teams to go under their season win total, etc. I don't dare yet invest in any overs or any positive positions or any to win positions, only because we haven't started camp yet. We haven't done any preseason, and as irrelevant as preseason is, people do get twanged and injured and such. And so I wait until the last minute to do any positive betting, meaning to take Team X to win the Super Bowl or their division or over X amount of wins until right before the season starts.
No, that's good. You know, you're getting on. I mean, some people would call it a late time, but there's a lot of hype now in the whole industry. And I mean, that's the stuff you kind of want to fade a little bit here. There's two teams in particular that everybody's on, the Texans and the Packers. And it's like, you know, I can find some wrong. I can find some bad with them. You know, I can certainly do that. I think sophomore slumps are definitely possible, especially with the Titans here. So we'll see what happens. And but more importantly, for me and you, we have a massive event this weekend, don't we? UFC 304, Leon Edwards against Bilal Muhammad. And I almost kind of forgot about Edwards. It's been so long since I've seen him fight. It's just like he almost left my brain completely, Lou.
Well, Leon, he's a great fighter, and I don't know that anyone has had a two-handed clasp onto his cape in the last several fights more than me. We've made great income from Leon. But there's some moving parts into this fight. I think it should be really compelling. These guys have been in there before. We've seen them tussle to an extent, a limited amount of time before, and there's been a line out before. So we have more than nothing on this fight, which is good.
Okay, it's absolutely. And he did fight in December. It's just kind of, I guess 2 fights in the last year and a half is what he had. He had Usman back in 2023 in March, which is a year and a half ago, right? And then Colby Covington. So that's why I said that. But before we get into the card, I always want to ask about the venue, my man. We are fighting in Manchester, England. What's significant about this venue for this event?
Well, what's significant about the event is that it is away from the apex. And so for any pay-per-view event as this is, when they ship off to another city, we know we're getting the 30-foot cage. So we have to understand they'll be competing with extra real estate, and that probably is advantageous to Aspinall and Blades, the big boys, gives them more room to run. But boy, the smaller fighters will really have a tremendous amount of room to navigate and negotiate. Other than that, it's Manchester, England, and so we have plenty English fighters on the card. The last card in England 2 years ago when Aspinall and Blades toiled, and Aspinall got hurt, as a matter of fact, the English people on the card went 6-0. And so what we've noticed, or what I've noticed, is that in some of these, in almost every one of these fights, the local English fighter has really gotten steamed hard or taken a lot of money early in the fight. with the one maybe sole exception being champion Edwards, who has seen his price steadily rise, but very incrementally.
Yep, I have been watching that as well. How many English fighters do we have here? And if you didn't count them, I'm counting them right now. I almost see in the undercard, not the early prelims, though there's some there. There's a English fighter in every single fight, man.
Yeah, there's 10 from England proper, then you add 3 Irishmen and a person from Wales. And you get pretty much a kind of a regional flavor against the world.
Yeah, that is interesting. And how much, I mean, it's hard to ask this question because it's hard to know what the judges are, but is there like a 20 cents or 30 cents of home ring or home cage value do you put through? I do myself a little bit in my mind when I'm handicapping. What do you do?
Well, first of all, you have to understand, or at least these premises are what I believe. Number one is that whether they go to Bangladesh or Brazil, the UFC are somewhat manipulating the card in their zeal for expansion to allow those local fighters to have maybe favorable setups so that the locals do well, fare well, and the fervor for UFC continues to fire in that particular country. As I mentioned earlier, the last time in England, the English fighters went 6-0, had very favorable matchups. And who were those athletes? A lot of the same athletes that are Aspinall was on the last card, Molly McCann was on the last card, Patty was on the last card, plus a few others. So it's the usual suspects. And so I usually take a really hard look as to who the matchups are and is it potentially a favorable matchup? That's where I start. Now you were asking and implying about the judging. And yes, I think you have to add a premium for the local there only because the fervor of the local crowd supporting their fans has to influence the judges to some degree sitting at cage side, because if Pimlet or McCann throws a big looping, windmill shot, whether it hits or not, the crowd's going to respond, and that could easily affect the judging. And as we know, watching UFC judging, the criteria has been adjusted on how they want to try and award credit or a premium for damage and action and actual infliction. And so just riding a person in wrestling fashion doesn't seem to be enough. So we've seen some really odd decisions based on these new criteria. And so when a fight goes to decision, doesn't matter how good you feel about your fighter, you're holding your breath.
100%. And that's funny that you mentioned that, because I look at the Mokaev fight, Mohamed Mokaev versus Manel Kape. And, I look at this price at minus 150, and this is an English fighter. What the hell am I missing? I'm thinking this should be minus 250 more. And don't get me wrong, I have a lot of respect for Manel Kape, but you're looking at a fighter that's not going to let him off the ground in Mokaev. His forward pressure, his takedown ability, 5.75 takedowns is his average. I just don't see Manel getting any punches thrown. And now you say criteria, well, they give more to damage than control for sure. I wish they told me when they were doing that. That would have helped me out a little bit in the past. But I just don't see Mokaev letting him off. And I think with the home crowd, I just feel that this is a short price at minus 150. What is your thoughts on this fight?
Well, this is going to make for great radio because my thoughts are quite the opposite. I think Mokaev has not been in the cage with a nearly elite fighter yet. Yes, he was in the cage with Perez and I had Mokaev in the fight. He barely won that. He shouldn't have won that. Perez, in my opinion, won that fight. But be that as it may, that's the highest level of opponent that he has faced. And so some of those numbers, his takedowns and his et cetera, look inflated because he hasn't been fighting near the kind of caliber athlete that Kopp has been in with. Kopp is much bigger. He usually has trouble making weight. I've already put a position in on Kopp as a second leg of a parlay with my clients, and that price was at Kopp minus 110. So I've got the worst of it there, and I've had a couple calls. What are we going to do if Kopp misses weight? Blah, 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 because he easily could. He has before. Now, in the fighter interviews this morning, he was weighing 133, looked good, spoke articulate, and if Manuel Kopp makes weight easily, I will add to the bet against Mokaev. I don't believe Mokaev is in the same league as Kopp. He surely cannot stand and strike with him. All fights begin on the feet. Kopp is too fast, too strong, too athletic, too experienced. This is a PhD in MMA for Mokaev, who's a Dagestani fighter fighting out of England. I like Kopp a good deal, provided he makes weight in this fight.
All right, so making weight and some disagreement here right off the bat. So I like that. I saw Kopp's last two losses back in 2021 against Nicolau and Alexandre Pantoja. Now, there's nothing wrong with losing to Pantoja. Don't get me wrong, but I'm guessing there was a good amount of probably a good amount of wrestling in that one. I might have to rewatch that one, but maybe I'm just a little bit too. Maybe the price is a little bit more towards where it should be then if I'm thinking it's low for a guy like Mokaev. And I don't see, neither of these guys fought, I guess, the former champion and Davison, right? I'm not seeing them fight the top.
But Pantoja's the champ now. And he fought Pantoja. Kopp breathes only to get another shot at Pantoja.
Okay. No, fair enough. I'm going to still side with the Englishman here, but it's good to have some disagreement right off the bat. I'm going to probably take it a little bit less than I was earlier because of my great respect for your handicap. Next fight here that I wanted to talk about is Marcin Prachnio, and he's an interesting price here because I kind of circled him here at 130 now. He's fighting a guy that I kind of believe was a little bit overrated. And I want you to try to break down this fight for us and tell us why Prachnio's the dog. I believe that Prachnio's losses, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to pull up his page. Apparently, I must have accidentally closed it. Oh, here it is. He's fighting Modestas Bukauskas. And his loss against Vitor Petrino, that is fine. No worries. And against Felipe Lins, I have no problem with him losing to those two beasts. Mike Rodriguez back in 2020. Now, if you go back to Sam Alvey, you shouldn't be losing to Sam Alvey, but at least that's 2018. I believe that he's improved. Well, Bukauskas is probably getting the favorite just because he won 4 out of his last 5 fights, and he also lost to Vitor Petrino too. And I just don't think that he's fought in the same level that Prachnio has. And excuse me if I'm pronouncing Marcin's last name wrong, but I have been following this fighter. What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, on this one, we're going to tend to agree a little bit more, Kiev. I do like Prachnio a little bit in this fight. I like him based on who he's been in with and the fact that over the course of his last couple fights, he's shown growth. He has good power. He's very aggressive. I would say maybe against the elite or the top 15, he may struggle, but he's seen a few of those guys. Bukauskas has also struggled. I would say that these two guys could be easily fighting for their jobs. This is the time of the year where we're going to get the Dana White Contender Series, dump a bunch of new bodies that fight cheap into the UFC. And these middle tier fighters and these lower tier fighters have to win to stay relevant and keep their foothold on their UFC position, while guys maybe at the end of their contract or the experienced 2 out of 3 losses or so may get cut. So there's also that, and that makes for really furious, desperate type fighting. And I think we're going to get that kind of fight from these two guys. Bukauskas may have a little bit better ground game, but they're both the same size. Prachnow's his size, has a little bit better power. And I tend to think that Prachnow as an underdog is a good position here as well.
And it's not like Bukauskas is taking people down. He doesn't take down people too often. Takedown defense, 58% for Marchand, and Modestas is 71%, but significant strikes. It's a lot higher for Marchand, and he lands more of them, more percentage of them, and he absorbs less of them. You know, I think this is going to be more of a stand-up fight. I'll be on this fighter, so I'm glad we align a little bit more on this, Lou. I'm going to look a little bit deeper on this one as well. Why don't you pick an undercard fight that you're keying in on?
You picked the 2 fights that on the undercard, believe it or not, that I really feel compelled to speak about. Now, we talked; those are a little closer lined, but I do think if you want to find an Englishman or 2 that are worthy, the Nathaniel Wood fight, I think he's in great position. Nathaniel Wood is what Daniel Pineda used to be. And now Daniel Pineda is a 38-year-old used to be, and he just doesn't have it anymore. I think Wood's in really, really good position here, but he's a huge favorite. The other favorite I like on the card is Mick Parkin, who fights the Brazilian the Polish fighter Bresky in this fight. Bresky's been in with better, arguably has a little more experience. But I like Parkin's body of work. I like the fact he works out with Aspinall. He is undefeated up until this point, and with the hometown crowd behind him, maybe you put Parkin together with Wood and try and find some, modestly priced, something that's going to, maybe bet 1 to win 1 kind of parlay on that. But those are 2 favorites that I like. They're 2 English favorites that I like. Elsewhere on the card, I want to try, and I always try and find someone that's going to be fighting one of the locals where the price may be inflated and we can get advantage on the other fighter. Now, we have to do that cautiously because like the last time I did this 2 years ago in England, the English fighters went 6-0 and my shots both went up in smoke. So you can't do it. You can't be reckless. Got to be somewhat guided and specific in who that may be, but I think I have one once we get into the main card.
Oh, I'm excited to hear about it. Nathaniel Wood, yeah, minus 400, 450. You're laying the wood with him if you're pairing him up with anybody. This looks like a 3-way pair if you want to get anywhere close to even money, unless you're laying it with a minus 120, minus 150 type situation here. So Wood is a heavy favorite in here. And, sometimes waiting, you're going to see these English fighters get fed up and up and up. So my thoughts is if you like an English fighter, you might want to get on it today. It's Wednesday, maybe tomorrow. You hope that the weigh-ins work okay for you. But this is price-wise, going 6-0, the market's going to know that before we jump into the main card. Molly McCann is a big favorite. And I almost feel like this, you remember last time with, Barstool and all that, and just the amount of crowd just cheering for Molly McCann in England was really surreal to me to watch. And she was so excited when she won, but I feel like Bruna Brasil, 9-4-1. I feel like she's just another L to throw out there for McCann just to get that big crowd win. Am I discounting Bruna Brasil too much? Because I got McCann circled as a parlay piece, and McCann's such a tough chick. I don't know if she's going to knock her out or not. She might knock her out. What are your thoughts on that real quick?
Yeah, I lean to McCann here. I believe she's the beneficiary of favorable matchmaking in this one. Brazil's not very experienced. McCann surely has experience over her. However, But what you do have in Brazil is 4 years younger, 2 inches taller, and a substantial reach advantage. And Brazil does, besides some BJJ, strike, but she just doesn't have the power that Molly does. In a fight that's line 2.5, 145 to the over, that's not as steep as we usually see. Maybe the way you go on this one is Molly inside the distance. She's really become an even more aggressive and more of a tiger since she dropped weight and began to compete at 115.
Okay, yeah, inside the distance, and I was looking at her opponent, and she's been knocked out before. It's one of those situations where women fighters, you always look to win by decision, and that's the first place you look. But she's been knocked out 3 times. Three wins by TKO, 3 losses by TKO, 2 sub, and then she's been a decision 5 times. So her fights have ended within the distance more often than they've went to decision. And now she's stepping up in class. So I agree. Is this plus money? I'm going to have to look at that a little bit.
I'm seeing Molly priced in the 300s. So inside the distance on Molly or via any finish might still be a small negative number. I can't imagine we're going to jump up on the bookmakers. They didn't just wake up, but that's one way to get her price down way more reasonable. That said, the Brazilian knows she's been shipped in for a reason. We're going to get her best fight, but I just think at 2 a.m. with a bunch of British fans that have, had 1 or 2 pints too many, you're going to have a large raucous crowd. And I think that's when Molly does her best. And, she's on this card for a reason, and that's to get people's excitement up and the way she fights. And so I think really Brazil is placed there as a guinea pig against Molly McCann. I'm sorry to have to put it that way.
I got some good news for you. Molly McCann to win by KO, TKO, DQ, or submission, plus 140 at DraftKings. So there you go. You got some plus money on
there. It is right there.
I am rooting for violence on this one. I'm going to be on this one for sure. Inside the distance. I love it. All right, let's get to the main card then. And we'll start out with the first fight in the main card, and that is between Giga Chikadze against Arnold Allen. I had a double take on this one. I was surprised that Giga was going to be this high of a dog, basically saying that he's got less than a 33% chance of winning this fight. Now, I know Arnold Allen is a very talented individual, great wrestler. But, Giga is got the reach advantage. He's got the size advantage by 4 inches. He's a great striker. He's fought wrestlers before. I'm looking at the Giga here a little bit in that price. And, I'm not going to lie. I know he's from Georgia. He's not the home fighter, but this price is moving in my direction.
Yeah, it is. Allen, I've got Allen opening here at minus 175. Gamblu clients jumped Allen at 218. He's now 260 or so. So maybe the time to take Allen was sooner as opposed to now. Again, a lot of these English local fighters have been pounded hard. And this happens typically in these European fights or these fights with other countries as those local crowds get involved. But I can tell you that even in Brazil, the Brazilian fighters don't get pounded like these English or Irish fighters do when there's a local card out there. Allen has been pounded pretty good, and I believe he should be pounded pretty good. Giga is primarily a kickboxing Muay Thai fighter. So he needs to stand up. His wrestling is not great. He is also older, 5 years, which is a big thing. Yes, he does have height and reach, but he is older as well. And I just think that Allen's, he's just lost 2 fights. One was to Max Holloway, the other to Evloev in a fight that I thought could easily have gone his way. He's been in with well better. His wrestling, I think, is going to be too much. He's on the bounce. I like Allen a good deal to get back on the win column against Giga in a fight that I also think is somewhat stylistically advantageous for Allen.
All right. So you are on Allen. Yeah. Uh, I'm going to keep continuing to watch this because I think more money is going to come in on Allen, and
Yep.
maybe Giga will be in the long shot category here for me. So let's move on to the next fight, and then we have Christian Leroy Duncan versus Gregory Rodriguez, RoboCop Rodriguez. You know, both these fighters above 6'2", 6'2" listed for Duncan, 6'3" for RoboCop. A better reach for Duncan, 79 inches to 75 inches. Significant strikes are probably pretty close at 6. These guys are both pounders. But, you know, I guess RoboCop's a little bit better in the takedown. I still think this is going to be a stand-up fight. I was a little surprised to see RoboCop as a dog, but then I just think that, you know, these are two fighters that are pretty close, but, you know, they're given the home court advantage, the home cage advantage to Christian Leroy Duncan. But now he's all the way up to minus 150. So I circled RoboCop, and I know RoboCop, he can be a punching bag at times. I don't love that, but I think he's got the better wins. The Chitty win was really nice to see. I'm not a Christian Leroy Duncan fan. I don't think he's had enough fights at the high level. He's only had 4 in the UFC. He's lost to Petroisian, which is a fine loss, but you know, I'm not super impressed by the rest of his resume. I believe that Gregory Rodriguez has the better fight camp at Kill Cliff, and I think that I might be on him. It sucks to have to fade the English, but that's what I circled.
I like this fight to fade the Englishman. This is just another typical example of the British local fighter getting pounded. This fight opened RoboCop minus 175. So the time to bet Christian Leroy Duncan has come and gone now. Now that he's on the negative side, you're absolutely getting the worst of the number, having to pay a minus 150. And quite honestly, here's an ex-basketball player. He's very athletic. He's good on his feet. He's the quicker, more precise puncher. He's the more nimble, athletic man in there. I'll give him all of that. However, RoboCop has been in with a more elite level of competition. He is versed in submissions as well as in knocking people out. And while he'll be giving away a little quickness and some spark and some zip to Christian Leroy Duncan doesn't hit like RoboCop's foes have hit him that have put him away. He doesn't have that power. And I think this is a really excellent position for RoboCop to go in there and use his BJJ. I absolutely expect this to be a wrestling match on the RoboCop position to take Christian Leroy Duncan down and completely rub him out from top position. If you follow who Christian Leroy Duncan's been in with, he hasn't been in with one fighter that even could spell wrestling, let alone try and execute it against him. RoboCop, provided he uses some IQ, and sometimes IQ with Brazilian fighters can be oil and vinegar, unfortunately. But if RoboCop sticks to the plan and takes him down, I think this is a great opportunity for him. And let's not forget, Christian Leroy Duncan was looking to fight a very inexperienced Muay Thai kickboxing foe that fell out, and RoboCop comes in short notice. That's not a great position for Christian Leroy Duncan. I like RoboCop a good deal here.
All right, good stuff. I wonder if that line goes even more favorable for us. Let's move on to the next fight. And this is such an interesting fight. Paddy Pimblett against King Green. And man, I was guilty of underestimating Paddy earlier in his career. Now, I thought that he might have lost against Gordon, but one thing I'm going to say is that I believe Paddy has gotten better. And the King, he is a great gatekeeper to the number one tier in that weight class, you know, but I don't know if his time is over, and I don't know if Paddy's improved enough to take on a tier one candidate like Green. So I am completely even on this. I think it should be minus 110 aside. What about you?
Yeah. I give the athleticism, the experience, and who he's been in with clearly to King Green. No question about that. Let me find him here in my notes.
No problem.
And but the key, and physically they're roughly the same. Pimlet has a few inches of reach on him. Bobby Green 37, Pimlet 29. So Pimlet's career is ahead of him. Bobby's is behind him. Bobby's still legitimate, and I think where you have him classified as a gatekeeper to the elite is fair. He can wrestle better than people understand, and he's got some good striking. And I would say that this fight is more than likely an even match. And then you got to consider the age then for our buddy Pimlet, and you got to consider his power. This fight opened Bobby Green minus 250. Now Bobby Green, I'm looking at minus 120 or thereabouts a pick 'em. So again, those that were not asleep. I say asleep because I didn't get Patty at a big dog price. That's what should have happened if I was aware. I wasn't aware. And so the value in this fight, I think Patty, between the home crowd and his power, I think he can catch Bobby Green. Bobby Green's been caught in 2 of his last 4 or 5 fights. One by Dober, who's a journeyman fighter, one by Jalen Turner, where he took 2 or 3 too many shots. Patty's mentioned that, believes that he could be a little chinny. He's going to try and catch up with Bobby Green, and Bobby Green doesn't believe that Patty's fast enough or skilled enough to catch up with him. So this should be a very interesting fight. My heart says go with King Green, but my head says if you want to bet Bobby Green, you bet him as an underdog when he overachieves. You don't bet him when you need him and you need to rely on him as a favorite, because that's when he's unreliable. So this is probably a pass for me, but if you got a gun to my head, I'd probably look at Patty in some small form.
Me too. I'm going to enjoy this fight. I'm just going to enjoy it as a fan. I think that's what you need to do sometimes. Take a breather.
Sure.
Between your plays. Absolutely. I think this is going to be just a wonderful fight, and I'm excited as hell to see it, man. Next fight, we have a rematch, and I'm bummed out because I was on Tom Aspinall the first fight when he broke his leg against Curtis Blades, and now the frickin' price is completely out of hand. It's so out of hand, in my opinion, that it's got me looking at Blades. I'm not sure if Blades is going to be able to do it. I feel that Blades, even though people look at him as an older fighter, he's still 33 years old to 31 years old. He's not that much older. But Aspinall, I initially bet to win for many reasons because of, well, he's a beast. Absolutely. He can do it everything. He can do it on the ground. He can do it on his feet. Blades even comes in as a wrestler, but I don't believe that he uses his wrestling to his best advantage at times. I think that he wants to sit there and stand up a little bit too often, and that's how he gets caught. I'm probably staying away, and I did bet Aspinall, but that thing's gone now, and I had to unfortunately take a TKO based on the leg break. What's your thoughts on this one?
Pretty much agreement. Gamblu clients took this fight again, the second leg of a parlay weeks ago. I don't even remember who we paired Aspinall with, but we got him at minus 218. And so now we hold Aspinall in a plus position into this fight, and his price has ballooned. And I think rightfully so. But I agree with you. The time to take Aspinall was earlier. Now he is so bloated as far as price is concerned. And I feel it's actually getting to disrespectful territory to Curtis Blades. If Curtis Blades did not have a glass jaw, then I would absolutely be doing jumping jacks here and advising a Curtis Blades play. We haven't seen him wrestle yet, because wrestlers, when they find their hands, they fall in love with them, and he's kind of done that a little bit. That said, make no mistake about it, you're going to see him wrestle Tom Aspinall, because that's how he has to win this fight, is to get this thing off the feet, take Aspinall's advantages away, which is footwork, quickness, speed, and power. Mute those by slow dancing with him at the high school prom, pressing him against the cage, and getting to top position on the floor where he can reign ground and pound. That must be, and that is the Blades' plan for this fight. Will he execute it? We'll have to see. And how long will it take Aspinall to touch him right here? Because as soon as he does, that's the recipe to finish Curtis Blades and his title aspirations. We saw Pavlovich do it. We've seen Derek Lewis do it. Yeah. In fact, in all of the losses that he has incurred, Curtis Blades, he's been iced by big athletic power punchers. What's Aspinall? A big athletic power puncher. So Aspinall's going to try and touch him, and Curtis Blades has to see if he can keep him from doing such. And I think over a 5-round fight, it's a lot to ask. I can't recommend Aspinall, even in parlays at this blown up ridiculous price. When I look here and I see that he opened minus 210, and I understand that 2 years ago when they fought, when he closed, he was minus 140. So now I'm going to pay minus 400 on him. I think it makes logical sense that he wins the fight, but I'm not paying minus 400 for anybody. If I was sitting here today without a bet, I'd look at some kind of goofy, small milk money bet that involved Blades in a parlay and use that big, huge plus number, hope to strike fire and boomerang it into advantage later on.
Yeah, and our buddy Brian Edwards likes Aspinall in the first round because, well, I mean, all his fights end in the first round minus Andrei Arlovsky. I'm not quite there yet. I have a little bit more respect for Blades here than to take Aspinall in the first round, but I don't see a good way that I could bet this fight. And I don't even think it's a good parlay piece. Like I said, it's getting to the point where I would be more inclined to put money on Blades. I would put Aspinall if I was making the price at minus 250, which is more than fair, giving him almost a 75% chance of winning this fight at all times. So that's my feelings on it. Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think if you look at DraftKings, and I can't now for whatever reason, my screen's eaten up by our display. But DraftKings this is lined 1.5 under minus 166. I tend to disagree with our good friend Brian Edwards. I like the over 1.5 here. In fact, what I would do is peel it back and look at the fight starts round 2. And if that's close to pick 'em, I would vomit on that. Excuse the expression. But I think Blades is getting massively disrespected here by the total and the sideline.
Yeah, I'll go to round props here just to see if I can quick find it here. Curtis Blades. Oh, it's of course the round props are saying he wins by round props. I gotta get my DraftKings together here.
Yeah, no, you got to go to the far right and it says to start round X.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
I know my menus.
Yeah, well, I use so many of these books. It's just so hard to memorize how they do it. They all do it differently. I wish there was a way to do it here, but I'll try to find this. I'll try to find this while you get into the main event, Leon Edwards against Bilal Muhammad. And it's nice to have two title fights because obviously John Jones had to relinquish his because of injury. So you get the heavyweight fight here. And then you have the 170-pound welterweight fight with Bilal Muhammad against Edwards. And I feel like Muhammad was due for this title fight maybe a little bit before this, but here we are. What are your thoughts on this, baby?
Yeah, another rematch. So we have data on this, and we've actually seen them fight for longer than 15 seconds like Blades and Aspinall. We got to see a round and a half, and we got to see pricing, opening, closing, etc. In that first fight, Leon closed minus 280. And from what I saw in that fight, he was every bit the 280 favorite. He was having his way with Bilal. And I think in that fight, Bilal learned an awful lot. And now we flash forward 2 years later. Both men are undefeated. Both men have won every fight put in front of them since then. Both men have improved. And while you look at the names, you'd say, well, Leon's fought the better competition. Yeah, but I don't credit Covington as being Covington in the last fight, and I don't credit Usman as being Usman in the second fight. And so for that matter, and there's nobody that's won more money and had more positions on Leon Edwards than me in the last 5 years. I've been riding this young man all the way to the bank. However, in this fight, I think that it's very, very clear to both parties what each needs to do. Leon understands that Bilal's going to go in there and be a wrestler and try and gas him, take his soul away from him, and make him quit. Leon knows that. Leon's camp knows that. Bilal knows that. Bilal's camp knows that. We all know that. Leon's job is to make sure that doesn't happen. And can he do that? Well, I'm not so sure he can do that. I think that his lack of activity, and I don't want to say he's been inactive, but he hasn't fought regularly, while Muhammad has. And while Muhammad hasn't fought the name fighters that Leon has, I think Muhammad knows that he has to go in there and sell his soul from the opening bell to pushing Leon back, draping himself all over him and making him quit. And I'm going to actually take Muhammad in the fight because I believe there's a chance that he can do that. Let's not forget that Leon Edwards was a half a round away from being somewhat obscure until he kicked Usman in the head and then was able to win the rematch and then go on and beat Covington. Yeah, being the champ's given him great confidence. He's long, he's tall, he's well-rounded. He's better than Bilal on the feet. He could probably wrestle with Bilal. And while it makes little logical sense to be siding with Bilal, there's something in the mentality of the unrelenting, forward-pressing Bilal that makes me believe in him. And the only way for me to bet this at this juncture with Bilal plus 210 or so is to side with him. And I think that's exactly what I'm going to do.
Okay. I remember the eye poke. I thought that was a nice way for Bilal to get out of that ass whipping that he was taking to Leon Edwards 3-4 years ago. But you're right. They're both undefeated. I would say even a half of Usman is better than what Bilal really has fought. I think Gilbert Burns got injured that last fight back in 2000, and that was back in 2023. It was May of 2023. So it's been a while since he fought too. Sean Brady was before that in 2022. Vicente Luque, he kind of back then I was more high on. He kind of flaked out on me. Since that loss, he lost 2 out of his next 3 fights. Luque's kind of fell out of my favor after Jeff Neal pounded him. I was on Luque that day. But this is a fight where I'm struggling to figure out how Leon is going to finish this. And I feel that Leon, both these fighters go to decision a lot. So my first inclination was Leon inside the distance because of the way he was fighting Bilal. And then all of a sudden, I do more study. And then I'm thinking Leon by decision, you're going to get some, plus money on. But, maybe I just take fight goes to decision. I'm more sure of the fight going decision almost than anything. I don't think either of these guys get taken out, Lou.
I would be surprised if Leon takes Bilal out. I am counting on Bilal taking Leon out. If he's gonna, he's not winning a decision in jolly old Union Jack, right? I mean, that's gonna be a tough task. He's either going to have to completely dominate him, and I think if he can dominate him, and let's also say that this fight won't look for a round and a half like the first fight did. Muhammad's not going to stand up here. He's going to charge across the cage like a linebacker shot out of a cannon. So it'll be a fascinating fight to watch. I just can sleep better knowing that my handicap entails the guy that's been there that's still trying to climb the mountain as opposed to stay there. That's the plus 210 underdog. I think Leon has too much to lose. He's been sleeping in silk sheets. He's been called champ for a while now. And I just think there's more hunger on the Bilal side. That's why I'm going that way.
All right. Well, I can't argue with that. That is great points. And what a wonderful main event this is going to make for such a great venue. By the way, that fight for Blades to go start in round 2 is minus 120. So it's minus 120. That fight starts round 2.
Yeah, that's a great price. That's my bet there. That fight starts round 2, and you'll watch me. If anybody's here watching me watch the fight, you'll see me turning purple because I'll be holding my breath for 5 minutes.
You sure will be holding your breath in that fight, but I don't disagree with that either. I have too much respect myself for Blades against Aspinall. And I think Aspinall is going to be a little bit more careful with his kicks right away in the first. Doesn't want to have to, have relive that deja vu. So I think that could force it into round 2 as well. I might be with you, Lou. Great stuff. I guess my last question would be: is there any futures of the next events that you're already delved into a little bit, or is that more of a wait and see?
No, it's never wait and see. I'm really aggressive about jumping future opportunities. The issue right now is that the UFC, or at least my friends at DraftKings, are being somewhat stingy about releasing future fights. There's the next fight card is out in full, and then there's a trickle of other fighters that are out there. I see Fluffy Hernandez is going to fight Michelle Pereira upcoming. Fluffy's a modest favorite right now. He'll be a bigger favorite as that fight gets closer. But there's a couple fights I'm waiting for. But to answer your question, no, there's just too slim of a menu right now. But as more fights become released, there's a whole bunch of them being announced right now. Those numbers will be coming out. And as they come out, I won't be shy about using them if I feel there's an advantageous position to be had.
Without a doubt. Davison Figueiredo minus 155 against Marlon Vera is interesting to me, looking at that. I think the Adesanya against Duplessis is interesting as well. Adesanya is only minus 142. A lot of respect for Duplessis after that Strickland win, which, I kind of thought Strickland might have had the points there if I would have scored it. But either way,
I agree. I agree. He beat Duplessis. The Duplessis has the title. Okay, let's see what he does against Izzy now with it. I think it's set up perfectly for Izzy to win and set up a rematch with Strickland. We'll see how that all goes.
Oh, let's do it, man. And great stuff, Lou. Where can our listeners get your wonderful information and fight plays?
Lou@gamblu.com is the email. Reach out anytime. The webpage, gamblu.com. There you'll see everything I work as far as sports. You'll see testimonials. I give some of my proceeds to the San Xavier Mission south of Tucson here in Arizona. It's the oldest mission in the country. I'm happy to have a tab on the webpage about that. And then my podcasts. Every Monday there's a UFC fight card. The Sneak Teat podcast dissects opening numbers and where the lines have moved. Then Friday of each week, there's a UFC fight card, is the About Business podcast. That can be accessed by going to gamblu.com, hitting the About Business podcast tab. And I appreciate you having me on, Kiev, and allowing me to speak about all the ways they can access Gamblu.
All right. Well, that is great. Make sure you guys check out Gamblu. What a wonderful website he has, and great podcast that I've been listening to for tons of years. At least 5 years I've been on your stuff, Lou. So really appreciate you coming on. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll be texting.
Thanks so much. Good luck, everybody.